This presentation is designed to give an executive overview of the quality management system standards and guidelines applicable to organisations providing forensic science services to the criminal justice system in the UK. Organisations can achieve independent recognition to these standards via an accreditation process which confirms compliance. This is generally voluntary, but in the UK, while not yet mandated in law for all areas, the Forensic Science Regulator has required that forensic units are accredited to relevant international standards, i.e. ISO IEC 17025 and 17020. As the standards mentioned above were not specifically written for forensics applications, supplemental documents have also been published, such as ILAC G19 and in the UK the FSR Codes of Practice and Conduct, as well as associated documents and specific accreditation body requirements. This presentation provides an overview of the application and relationship between these documents. The principles of quality assurance have been well established over many years in a variety of industries and are based on a premise of controlling processes themselves in order to have confidence in their output and meet customer needs. These principles have a clear application in forensics with the aim of ensuring that correct, complete and substantiated findings are presented in court. Each stage in the process, from initial investigation, evidence collection, submission, analysis, reporting, interpretation and presentation, are clearly critical, and each step can and profoundly will affect the next process in line. Over the years, quality management standards and guidelines have been developed which define good management principles aimed at providing confidence in the quality of the delivered product or service, and form the basis for continual improvement and capture of best practices. One such document, ILAC G19, written specifically for forensics applications, maps out the core processes involved in a forensic investigation as follows. Initial discussion regarding the scene of crime attendance, undertaking initial actions at the crime scene, developing a scene of crime strategy, undertaking the investigation, assessment of crime findings and consideration of further examinations, interpretation and reporting of scene of crime findings, examination and testing, interpretation of the results of examinations and tests, reporting of examination and tests including interpretation of results. Of course, organisations also need some support functions to ensure that these activities can be conducted, such as recruitment, training and competency assessment, test equipment, kits, software, supplies and consumables, IT support, transport, facilities and others such as technical information and methods. All of these processes will affect the core business process to some degree, and so requirements related to these activities are also included in quality management standards. Management also play a role in defining policies, strategies, support and monitoring the operation, and requirements are also contained in management standards. Finally, it's accepted that things may well go wrong, and there is a need for robust processes for recording complaints, mistakes or instances, taking appropriate action and taking action to ensure they will not reoccur. Risks need to be assessed and mitigated, and actions taken to improve the operation of the organisation over time, known as continual improvement. These aspects are also covered by most quality management system standards. In this section, we will discuss some of the standards involved. ISO is the International Organisation for Standardisation, which publishes agreed standards for a huge variety of subjects, including materials, products and test methods. It also publishes standards related to quality management systems. The principal standards which have been deemed to be applicable and mandated for use by the Forensic Science Regulator are as follows. ISO IEC 17020, requirements for inspection bodies, which is applied at crime scene. and ISO IEC 17025 requirements for calibration and test, which is applicable for laboratory applications, including digital imaging. ISO IEC 17025 covers both testing and supporting calibration. These two standards are shown here, covering the ILAC G19 core business process discussed earlier. ISO IEC 17020 covers the scene of crime, i.e. inspection of the crime scene, and ISO IEC 17025 covers the laboratory function. There is some overlap shown here to cover testing performed at the scene. Because ISO IEC 17020 and 17025 were not specifically written with forensic investigation in mind, additional documents have been published which provide additional requirements and interpretations, such as the FSR Codes of Practice and Conduct, as well as additional FSR-specific guidelines. Accreditation body, UCAS documents, such as RG201, also apply for crime scene investigation. In addition, many organisations, including some police forces, use a standard called ISO 9001, which may be applied to any type of organisation and also defines principles of quality assurance and improvement and covers general principles which overlap the above standards. Looking at each of the main accreditation standards in more detail, first we'll have a look at the structure and content of ISO 17020. ISO IEC 17020 and 25 both require the organisation is free from undue pressures, requiring an impartiality risk assessment and associated mitigations to be conducted. They also require maintenance of confidentiality in respect of the activities conducted by the organisation. The standard requires that the organisation be legally accountable and carries some kind of indemnity against claims. It requires that the organisation structure and responsibilities of personnel be clearly defined and the organisation effectively implements a management system, i.e. quality manual, standard operating instructions, etc. The following slides show the requirements for the control of the inspection process. In the case of forensics, this would typically start with the service level agreement, then with the request for investigation, the performance of the investigation, including recovery of evidence and generation of contemporaneous notes, and then reporting. Here we see the requirements for the support functions such as personnel, equipment and facilities, subcontracting or outsourcing of work, and control of documentation to ensure that correct and up-to-date information is available, as well as the retention and storage of records. Finally, the standard covers processes for complaint handling, internal audits, non-conformance and corrective action, preventive action to identify potential problems or risks, user feedback, and the periodic review of system effectiveness by the management. We'll now look at ISO IEC 17025 as applied to laboratories. As with 17020, we start with the customer. ISO IEC 17025 contains similar requirements, although not the same, related to the management system, impartiality, confidentiality, organisation and responsibilities as per ISO IEC 17020, as well as for management review. Again, the core process starts with the service level agreement and request for work, followed by method development, verification and validation, sampling, which in the most part is already covered by evidence recovery under ISO IEC 17020, receipt, handling, storage and return and disposal of exhibits, recording of results and technical records, the estimation and measurement uncertainty, the assurance of quality of results or quality control, and finally, reporting. In terms of support activities, the standard covers the provision of resources, personnel training and competency, facilities and environment including control of access, equipment maintenance and calibration, which includes controls on consumables and reagents, metrological traceability of measurement systems, and purchasing as well as outsourcing or subcontracting. IT systems, including support systems, laboratory information systems, and data backup and recovery are covered here, as well as control of document and records, which has similar requirements to ISO IEC 17020. As per 17020, the standard covers complaints, non-conforming work, internal audits and complaints, as well as corrective action. It also covers risks and opportunities, and customer feedback and improvement. The following two graphics provide a brief overview of the Forensic Science Regulator Codes of Practice and Conduct. The FSR Codes of Practice and Conduct apply to both crime scene and laboratory. This graphic shows the additional requirements listed in the FSR codes relating to management aspects which overlap with the ISO standards and specify additional requirements. These cover business continuity and additional requirements related to impartiality and confidentiality. It also covers non-conformance and audits and process requirements such as contract review, i.e. the service level agreement, requests and review of capability to perform the work, subcontracting, and additional requirements related to packaging and chemicals, complaint handling, as well as document control and records. This slide deals with the technical requirements of the FSR codes, covering personnel recruitment, code of conduct, training and competence, accommodation and environment, a very comprehensive section on method development, verification and validation, equipment and metrological traceability, exhibit and case handling, and quality assurance and reporting. It should be noted that the FSR codes are currently under review, and a new version is planned to be published in 2020. There are also a number of supplemental guidance, codes and protocols published by the regulator which cover specific aspects of forensics, such as method validation in digital forensics, cell site analysis, bloodstain analysis, etc., some of which are listed here but are subject to continuous review and addition. It can be seen from the above that there is a great deal of overlap between the various applicable documents and additional requirements specified in some which are not covered in others. So establishing systems and auditing against them is complex. We will now look at how organisations gain recognition of their compliance with standards through certification and/or accreditation. Accreditation is the independent evaluation of conformity assessment bodies, in this case forensics laboratories working to ISO IE 17025, and crime scene investigation units working to its sister standard ISO IEC 17020. In the UK, accreditation is performed by the United Kingdom Accreditation Service, UKAS. UKAS conducts assessments directly against conformity assessment standards such as ISO IEC 17025, and laboratories and inspection bodies apply directly to them for accreditation. ISO 9001 and other standards such as ISO 14001 for environmental management systems are assessed by certification bodies who are subject to accreditation themselves by UKAS. In this case, the organisation applies to a certification body of their choice, who then assesses the applicant. We have shown here the certification mark of BSI, however there are many bodies accredited to provide certification, a few of which are listed here. A full list can be found on the UKAS website, a link to which is provided at the end of this presentation. Laboratory accreditation generally differs from quality management certification or registration to standards such as ISO 9001, in that the assessment teams employ subject matter experts who directly evaluate the practical aspects and technical operation of the laboratory or inspection body, which increases the scientific rigour of the assessment. Having said this, being accredited cannot guarantee that mistakes will not happen, and there are well documented cases of errors and failures even with accredited facilities. It can, however, provide confidence that the laboratory operates an effective management system with rigorous requirements for ensuring competency, technical operation and reporting of results, and can be used as the basis for continuing improvement of the organisation's management systems. Accreditation bodies are normally themselves peer assessed through an international system administered by the International Laboratory Accreditation Corporation, ILAC. Accreditation bodies are therefore established in many countries with the primary purpose of ensuring that conformity assessment bodies are subject to oversight by an authoritative body. In this section, we'll discuss briefly the steps involved in establishing a management system and some benefits and perceived roadblocks. This slide shows some of the key steps in implementing a management system with the aim of gaining accreditation. Firstly, determination of the scope for which accreditation is required, i.e. what specific tests or activity accreditation is being sought. Training and requirements of the applicable codes and standards. Gap assessment of existing systems against requirements. To create an action plan and assign responsibilities. To determine and provide resources, equipment, systems and time. To establish quality policy and objectives, including key performance indicators. To develop the management system documentation, manuals, SOPs and instructions. To perform method validation studies and uncertainty assessments where required. To train internal auditors and perform the audits. To apply for accreditation and to conduct management reviews. This slide shows a draft implementation plan for a rollout of ISO 17020 in a small business. There are many benefits of establishing an effective quality management system standard and of gaining accreditation. These include assurance of and confidence in the quality of results and rigour of performance, to reduce the likelihood of cases being challenged in court, as a basis for capturing best practice and to improve processes, to think processes through and ensure their effectiveness, management confidence, establishing rules for competence, etc., and external recognition. Like anything, there are also some potential downsides. Over bureaucratic systems, increased paperwork and form filling, time and cost of development of management systems and writing procedures, time and cost of performance of controls, for example, method and software validation, internal audits and reviews, the time and cost involved in accreditation and ongoing surveillance reaccreditation, and it's often perceived to reduce flexibility and creativity. It is evident from the above that a significant amount of time is typically required to be spent in establishing systems and procedures. Most organisations do not have the luxury of a dedicated team to develop such systems, and so the burden of development work falls to the investigation and laboratory team members, typically in addition to their day-to-day work. Defining processes and writing procedures is time-consuming. If processes are well defined, it is pretty easy to come up with a procedure. If not, it becomes much harder. It could be argued that it's precisely these areas where processes are not clear where the most benefit should be gained. So investment here should not be wasted. I often hear complaints on implementation blaming ISO. Whilst it is the case that some requirements may be somewhat burdensome and some do not have effective resolution yet, for example of duplication of software validation, particularly in digital forensics, it is critical that procedures are practical and implementable, and rigorous but not inflexible. It is the organisation's own procedures that will be assessed during the accreditation process. Of course, systems must ensure the rigorous performance and collection of data to support cases, but care must be taken not to create unnecessary bureaucracy and introduce constraints where they are not required. If procedures are over-specified and over-detailed, they are unlikely to be read and understood, and thus counterproductive. Systems should be set up to meet best practices in line with the target standards and not set out to please the accreditation body. It is your system. To recap, this presentation has covered some basic principles of quality assurance and management, the applicable standards and their application, ISO 17020 for inspection or crime scene and 17025 for laboratory operations. We've briefly mentioned ISO 9001 and ILAC G19. In addition to this, we've talked about the FSR codes of practice and conduct and the process of accreditation and certification, implementation steps, and some pros and cons to think about. We hope you found this presentation useful. The next slide provides some links to websites where information can be found. Finally, if we can assist further with the training or advisory services, or you'd like to give feedback on this presentation, please don't hesitate to get in touch.